homicide investigation began when 3 bodies were taken outside the Jones boatyard on the Miami River.
3 bodies floating in the Miami River in what appeared to be an almost routine homicide.
2 nights prior, there was a boat right here being offloaded, 200 kilograms of cocaine. 6 uniformed individuals raided this boat, and there were 6 offloaders on board the boat. They all 6 jumped in the Miami River, where this marina is. 3 of them survived. 3 of them didn't. 3 of them drowned, and they surfaced like 2 days later. It didn't take long to determine they were involved in trafficking. Them being Latin, them being traffickers, that became a syntax case within a week. Now, back in 1985, a very, very, very common crime was robberies and ripoffs by police impersonators. We assumed that was the case here, that just some people bought some uniforms, did a drug rip. We got a telephone call from Detective Louis Alberni that said he had a uniformed officer on his department that had information regarding this case. So about 11 o'clock one evening, we went over there to speak with this officer, Armando Estrada. It became very obvious, very quickly, that the information that this officer was giving us was so obviously erroneous that it was just transparent that he was trying to throw us off. It was at that point that we both knew instinctively that we had a case of police corruption as opposed to police impersonators.
Allegations of unprecedented corruption within the Miami Police Department.
We experienced the largest police corruption crisis since the Serpico days up in New York.
We hated it. I mean, you know, the last thing you want to do is have to investigate other cops. But if it's got to be done, it's got to be done.
7 police officers were arrested, some accused of causing the drownings on the river, ripping off drug dealers, plotting to kill or intimidate witnesses to their alleged crimes. A few months later, the scandal broke wide open. Rudy Arias turned from defendant to informer, confessing his crimes and naming upwards of 60 other cops he claimed were also crooked.
2 new indictments are expected this month in the River Cops case, and more indictments are expected after that. The River Cops are trying to break down the door to make deals. Rodolfo Arias has reportedly proved to be an excellent witness. He has given information on dozens of other cops.
18 former policemen charged, 4 becoming government witnesses, 2 going into hiding, 8 pleading guilty either before or during their trials, 1 convicted, and another still facing trial. In the meantime, 20 more former police officers are under investigation by Miami, Metro-Dade, or FBI agents, facing possible charges in either state or federal court.
The charges were unbelievable, shocking. The most shocking case I'd ever even heard of. Murders, creative disposals of bodies, witness intimidations, laundering huge sums of money, extortion, drug dealing, hundreds of kilograms of cocaine, and they were all police officers who were accused of doing this. There was no law and order whatsoever.
We have to start taking the war on drugs very seriously. If we don't, we're going to have something like a domestic Vietnam. We're either going to fight the war and win it, or we're just going to give up.
They're going to wait until some senator's daughter or some congressman's nephew gets kidnapped because they think that he had something to do with passing some law that is not beneficial to them, and then what are we going to do?
We need to have a great backlash at home at the governments that are involved in drug trafficking. They should be sanctioned, and we should all make a great effort to isolate them from the civilized world.
Paula Hawkins, she was making a lot of waves doing the cocaine wars when Reagan was down here in Bush. Max started this, showing the paper to Griselda about Paula Hawkins, making these speeches about the drug trade and this and that. We were in Max's house, and Griselda says, I want to kill this bitch. I said, who would that be? She said, this bitch, Paula something. I said, Paula Hawkins, she's a senator. She said, yeah, I want you to kill her. I said, me? I said, no, I won't do that. She says, I'll pay good. I said, I don't care. That's too much heat. She gets killed, ain't no place for us to hide once you kill the senator. She asked me if it could be done. I said, it could be done. She's not the president. It could be done. She was going to have a speech in New Orleans. It was about 3 weeks away from this speech. Well, in Colombia, that's a normal thing every day. But in the United States, we had never discussed the killing of president or senator, you know, or judge, just lawyers. That was, you know, we talk about that every day. Well, Max kept pushing, yeah, you know, Ravi should do it. You know, Ravi's the guy, you know, he's a good marksman, this and that. I started telling Griselda, I said, if this is done, your business goes down the drain. There's no place for you to hide. Nowhere in the world. They're going to chase you for the rest of your life. They're chasing you now, but this is nothing compared to what you get into. Finally, I talked to Griselda, I talked to Dario. I got some sense to him. I said, leave this alone. This is no good for business.
I think this is one of the gravest problems facing us internally in the United States.
You're going to have to quit treating this national problem that we have here in this area as a local problem. and put the resources and money and people and agents in here to cope with it.
They were getting fed up, especially Vice President Bush in Miami and all that.
For those that come in here with their automatic weapons and their Lear jets and their boats all for petty cash, kind of cost of doing business because the profits are so big, put them away. Find them, cash them, arrest them.
The town had enough. The federal government had enough. They brought in the task forces. They brought in the cavalry.
They were bringing state troopers to patrol the streets of Miami.
I would hope and pray that these people would get the maximum death penalty to make an example to the rest of the drug culture that's happening around Florida that we won't tolerate.
There should be no mercy on them.
The Navy loaned 2 of its radar planes. The Army has loaned helicopter gunships.
The war is being waged in the Atlantic. Ships and planes part of Hat Trick to stop drug trafficking.
Operation Hat Trick is the D-Day of our war on drugs.
Military ships and aircraft with narcotics agents aboard track suspected smugglers.
It's expected to please law enforcement officials. They've been trying for a long time to get more help from the military in the war on drugs.
Any smuggler who's going to enter the coast of the United States now is now going to be somewhat apprehensive that he may not make a go of it.
Arrests in the area covered by the task force are up 27%. Drug seizures are up about 50%.
So it was just too much police and a lot of heat on TV. Since she had business in California too, I told Griselda we should just leave for a while. She said, yeah, it's a good idea. Plus, we're opening up a new route through California.
Now that we know, in hindsight, that she left the area back around 1984, clearly the homicide rate went down in that time period.
The efforts here by the Drug Task Force has officials in other parts of the country saying now they've got increased problems with drug smugglers moving cocaine through other places away from Miami.
The Colombian network is spreading to Los Angeles, where police say cocaine seizures are bigger than ever.
Faced with the fact that the whole organization had relocated to California, and I'm a Miami agent, I had to convince my superiors that it was worthwhile for me to investigate a case in California. I said, if I ever get her, I'm going to give her a kiss on the cheek.
What Mickey brought was only part of it. And I never would let Mickey know if I had anybody else working, because I did try other people also. We were working with Barry Seal. He was another group.
Barry had been a TWA pilot and a Vietnam War pilot before that.
Barry was, out of everybody, the best pilot that I ever saw in my life.
And he drifted into the Colombian cartel market as a delivery specialist and got himself involved in guns, money, and drugs through flights in and out of Managua, Nicaragua, where he enjoyed the protection of President of Nicaragua.
Barry Seal had the most incredible operation I'd ever seen.
I'm not a drug smuggler. I say prove it.
Barry was fearless. 1,000, 1,500 kilos of coke was like a joke to him, and it was not a problem. Barry worked out of Louisiana. He'd work on the drop of a hat. He didn't care. He'd get in his plane and he'd go down there and he'd throw 1,000 kilos on the plane and he'd come back to Louisiana. He landed at a regular airport. He had a warehouse. They had ramps in the back that would open up and you could drive vehicles into them. You could put tons on these vehicles. Barry got busted on a load and didn't tell anybody.
He cut himself a deal as a federal confidential informant.
They would let him go and they would install cameras on the inside of his plane, and they wanted him to film an actual loading, bring the coke back here and the film back here. And he agreed to do this.
The Army brought in the truckloads, the duffel bags full of cocaine, and they were loaded on board the aircraft by the Cuban and Sandinista soldiers.
And he had some great shots.
Barry Seal was able to snap pictures during the mission of a leading international cocaine trafficker, Sandinista government official, soldiers loading cocaine onto the plane.
Top Nicaraguan government officials are deeply involved in drug trafficking.
And on national TV, President Reagan held up this picture and said, here's Pablo Escobar loading a plane with cocaine.
This picture, secretly taken at a military airfield outside Managua, shows Federico Vaughn, a top aide to one of the 9 commandantes who rule Nicaragua, loading an aircraft with illegal narcotics bound for the United States.
The pictures were produced by Barry Seal.
He has thus become the key witness in South Florida's most important drug case.
Seal also told the President's Commission on Organized Crime how easy it is to smuggle cocaine.
My initial experience was with marijuana, but I soon moved into cocaine because of its ease in handling and its profit structure.
That's when the heat started to come to Escobar and to Ochoa. Not from the Colombians.